Hi everybody, thank you so much for coming. I'm Michelle Gordon. I'm a community librarian at Fresno County Public Library. And this is our California The Journey StoryJam event that we've been working on for a while, so I'm really excited. Couple pre-story stuff to go over. First, this program is a finale event in a series of programs that we've done that have let people tell their stories in different formats. We had this really cool potluck where there was food, and we have people that write their stories and we post them on our website. And last month we did an art hop exhibit. So this one's our live storytelling event. It's really exciting. This was a part of the California Center for the Book's Community Conversations About Immigration program, and has been generously supported and funded by the California Humanities Grant, and we thank them very much for their support. There are a couple ground rules that I want to go over. We do this for all our StoryJam events. Please be respectful to all of our storytellers. We ask that there are no interruptions, including telephones. So if you have a cell phone, please make sure that it's on silent. And no side conversations, because I know you sound really quiet to yourself, but I promise we can hear you up here. And please try not to get up and leave during the story. Wait until they're done, and then if you need to exit, the restrooms are just around the corner. No heckling. If there's any heckling, you will be asked to leave, so no heckling. No lettuce throwing or anything. Our storytellers have been asked to keep the stories to a PG-13 rating, and they have been given a time limit. We do have our timekeeper down here to keep everyone on call so that we can get everybody's stories in our time. And you're free to share as little or as much as you are comfortable sharing. We are recording. We are live streaming to our Facebook. And so hopefully you'll be able to go back and watch yourselves later. One of the things that we do at all our StoryJam events, we have a small StoryJam at our Politi Library every second Wednesday of the month. And it's not themed, it's just a come and tell your story. You sign up and you just tell your story. One of the things that we do there is the folks that started the StoryJam event, they always go first. So I get to go first. So I'm going to tell you my story about coming to California. Before I do, I just want to make sure. Did everybody get one of those really cool notebooks that we have? Yes, awesome. Make sure you grab one of those, and you also should have gotten a survey. It's really important before the end of the event that you fill out and turn in the survey, because that's going to get you an entry to win a Kindle Paperwhite. And we also have a collection of books from the California Center, the book that we're giving away. So make sure you fill that out before the end of the night and turn that in either at the library table or to one of the friendly librarians walking around. Make sure you put your name and a contact method on there, because if you win but your name's not on it, I can't help you. Make sure you put your name on there. All right. So, I'm Michelle. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Go Steelers. Not kidding, go Steelers. And I've lived a lot of places in the East Coast and the Midwest, you know, Ohio, Kentucky, Illinois, Virginia. I've lived all over the place over there. And I was in Cincinnati, Ohio for 12 years, and I had a house there. And I lived there for 12 years before I moved to California. I went to Indiana University to get my master's in library science, because you have to have a master's degree to be a librarian. And when I finished, I was looking for a job in a really hard job market, and I was like, well, I can relocate. I can go anywhere because I don't have anything tying me down. But the one place I never imagined having to go was California. I had no intention of moving to California or even visiting California. But one of my best friends in grad school got a job at Fresno Pacific University as their archivist. And when I saw the job ad for Fresno County Public Library, I was like, why not? It would be, you know, wouldn't that be funny? At least I would know someone there. Well, isn't life funny? Here I am. In September of 2014, I packed up my car with everything that would fit in it. It was a Kia Rio, so it wasn't much. I got one of those big bags that you put on top of the car so I could put all my stuff in it. And I hit the road. But it wasn't what was in my car, it was what I was leaving behind. My friends, my family, my mother, all of my friends, and my dog of 6 years I had to leave behind. And not to mention the snow, the Eastern time zone, and anything that I would consider normal. But I left it behind, and I drove out here. It took a week for me to come out here, and it was the most beautiful road trip that I've ever taken, and I wish I had more time as a sightseer to do that trip, because the United States is incredibly beautiful. And I had no idea what I was getting into. When I drove through Nevada, I got sunburned from driving. I was in a car and I got sunburned. Nobody told me you had to wear sunscreen just to drive. That's not something that we worry about back east at all. And when I got here, I crashed with my best friend in her dining room. I bought a bed that wouldn't fit up her stairs. So I set up my bed in her dining room, and for a little bit over 3 months, I lived in her dining room. That New Year's, I went out to Colorado to meet my sister who brought my dog out, which made me feel so much better because I missed him so much. But things still didn't really feel normal. Like when I first got out here, my first 2 days of training, I learned a very important lesson for Fresnans. Do not leave a can of soda in the car in September. I know what happens to a can of soda when you leave it in freezing temperatures. It freezes. It doesn't explode. It freezes. In hot temperatures, it explodes all over your car. I had no idea this would happen. No idea. I don't like watching football at 10 o'clock in the morning at all. They need to call it Monday evening football instead of Monday night football. It's very confusing. And winters. No, not really. It's like non-summer, not really winter. But it's not all bad, right? Like I've been to some amazing places out here. I've been to Yosemite. It's so gorgeous, right? I got to drive from San Francisco to Los Angeles on the Pacific Coastal Highway thingy, and that was amazing. And I've made some incredible friends, and I've worked with some incredible people over the last 2 years, and that's what keeps me here is my job, because I love my job. I feel like I've gotten to do some amazing things and, you know, maybe make a difference in Fresno County. But it's not home, right? Like my home is always going to be Pittsburgh. But in the last 3 years, I kind of feel like I'm not really a tourist anymore, but it's not home yet. But, you know, maybe a little bit more time and I'll feel less and less like a tourist and more like a Fresnan. That's my story. Thank you. So our first up is Mario. If you want to come on up, Mario Alberto Gonzalez Silvestre is going to share his story now. All right.
So good afternoon. Hope you can all hear me. My name is Mario Gonzalez. Mario Gonzalez is what I go by. My name as growing up, Mario Alberto Gonzalez Silvestre, is what I was born with. I am originally from Mexico. I lived there until at the age of 7. At the age of 7, my father, who had been here for 3 or 4 years already, showed up to our home in Mexico. And I remember telling my mom, there's a man outside looking for you. I don't know who this gentleman is. I hadn't seen him in a while. I didn't grow up with him a lot. So I was like, Mom, there's a guy here looking for you. She took me outside. We all went outside. It was me and my other siblings. She's like, well, that's your dad. It was in December, I remember, 1992. It was the last Christmas I spent in Mexico. From there, my dad decided it was time for us to come here. He had been working on getting us papers to come to this country. He had applied for us in 1990 after he got his green card. But as we all know, immigration takes time for them to decide and for them to process an application. After he submitted the application in 1990, he hadn't heard anything for 2.5 years, almost 3 years. He decided that he couldn't be without us anymore and decided to bring us up here. So him, my mom, and 6 kids started making the trip up north. We ended up in Tijuana. We were there for a couple of weeks trying to find someone to cross us over. Because, had to find ways that were not technically legal to get us into this country. My siblings were all either younger or smaller than me. I've always been tall. So even my older sister was a lot smaller frame, and so she could pass as a younger individual. All of them were lucky enough that they were able to pass with someone else's documents. They were passed over, and it was an easy cross, with the exception of myself and my other brother. My other brother, he's darker. a lot darker. Could pass as a mix of African American and Caucasian. So him and I struggled a little bit more because I was too tall and he was too dark. For him, they used other means, which I haven't learned all of them yet. As for me, though, they decided I was too tall and I was going to be considered an adult at the age of 7. And so I was, along with my mom, my uncle, and my 15-year-old cousin, made to run over and run through several hills, San Diego Hills. I'm sure you've all seen the map. It's not very flat out down there. So we ran, and eventually we couldn't run anymore because my mom broke her ankle. And we couldn't make it. We couldn't keep up with the coyote. Couldn't keep up with the people that were being brought over. We decided to turn ourselves in to immigration, to INS at the time. My uncle, my cousin, myself, and my mom. With the help of my uncle and my cousin, we carried my mom. I couldn't do much. I mean, I was tall, but I was skinny, frail, and not very powerful, not very strong, so I couldn't help carrying my mom. But my cousin, my uncle, they carried my mom. We took her over to where the where the immigration officer was. We had seen their truck. That's why we were running. We'd seen the truck. We just wobbled over to the truck. They loaded us up, and thankfully they did not process us. They didn't take our fingerprints, didn't take our photos. They just drove us to the hospital, took my mom to the hospital in Tijuana, dropped us off there, and they made their way back. About a week or so later, my cousin and I, along with our coyote, this is the second time we're making our attempt to come to the country. My cousin, 15, was made responsible for me, 7-year-old again. They come into this country. I remember running through sewers. I remember it was sewers because it was really smelly. I remember stepping on stuff that was mushy, and it was not something I can easily forget. I remember coming out of a tunnel next to a freeway. Later came to find out that's the 805. I think you've all seen it. It's quite busy. We had to run across that freeway to make it to a safe location. So there was holding hands. My cousin on one side, the coyote on the other side, 17-year-old coyote, and my cousin dragging me across as cars were zipping through. The coyote got scared and let go of my hand, and so I fell. I lost my balance, fell. Cars were coming, zipping along. My cousin was forced to let go of my hand because of the traffic. He managed to stop himself, come back, pick me up, and drag me across. Had it not been for my cousin, I would have been assigned another cross there on the 805. It is scary. It is part of what people face, and that is part of my story. I eventually made it here to the U.S., made it to Fresno, California. I don't know if you've all heard of Burro. Burro is a very small community down in the southwest part of the county. I grew up there from 1993 till now. 2006 when I left and came to Fresno, but that was where I was. That was my community. Eventually got my green card in 1999, and then in 2008 became a citizen. And so since then I've been an immigration advocate, immigration worker, to kind of give back to my community because I know how much they suffer and I know what they go through. Thank you for listening to my story.
Next we have Richard Daniel Isle. He is a member of the Cowlitz Indian Tribe of Washington State. He moved to California in '57 and has lived in Fresno since late summer of '57. He's retired and serving as a photographer for the nonprofit Community Alliance newspaper of Fresno and is also an art model.
Hello, everyone. First, I want to acknowledge that all this land was originally Yokot's land, and so this land has been taken over by even before it became the United States, it was part of Mexico. So don't forget that. Most people here are immigrants to California. But this story of my story coming to California is a story of love, of dedication, of independence and determination, and a woman who was very, very independent, and she was a trailblazer for women's rights. I'm talking about my mother. Her story, I'll go back to the late 40s. She was going to college up in the state of Washington. She, being very independent, well, her father was a farmer, and she was born in 1926, 26. So anyway, it was before the big depression came. So she lived through all that, but even though they didn't have money, they still did not feel poor. They had food to eat, and she went to college. She was the valedictorian at her high school, and then she got a tennis scholarship to go to college. She went to college, and she loved animals, so she went to veterinary school up in Washington State at Pullman, Washington State College. At that time, in the late 40s, they only allowed women into the program for veterinary school every other year. So when she went in, she was with 3 other women going to college to learn how to love animals and to treat animals for people. So she went there, she got her degree, but also, while she was going to college, she loved sports. And so she became a journalist, a writer, sports writer for the college paper. And that was very unusual for a woman. And also, she loved the American Indian culture. We call it American Indian, but that's what it's mostly known as, but it's the indigenous people of this continent, whatever you want to call us. So she loved the culture. So she found a man that he was a big man on campus. He was an athlete, and he played basketball for the college team. He played baseball as a catcher for the team, and he also played football as a quarterback. So he was very athletic, and she pursued him, and he became my father. So this is a story of a great love and melding of cultures and just overcoming all kinds of different challenges, just to go with what she loved, you know. She even had 6 sisters. She was the 6th one in the family, 6th sister, and my father had 6 brothers, and he was the second to last of the sons. But so my mother pursued my father, and they got married, and shortly after that, I was born. I was born in 1950. Actually, 9 months before that, and 11 days, the college baseball team, which my father was a catcher for, won a tournament. So this was in the spring of 1949. So 9 months and 11 days later, I was born. So you can get the story from that. So she grew up having me, and then a couple of years later, she had another child, a daughter, my first sister, and then 2 years after that, she had my second sister, her 3rd child. So she lived up in Washington. She became a veterinarian. She had degrees first in her maiden name of Drake. She came from Sir Francis Drake at some point, according to my grandmother. So anyway, we grew up in Washington for a few years, but my father was too patriotic, and my mother was too independent. She could not stand for his trying to control and dominate her life. So she divorced him, which is another very big step in the 1950s. So when I was 5.5 years old, they got divorced, and we moved to Seattle, Washington, 2301 27th Northwest. And So we went to school there a little bit, and then she married again, and she brought us back down to California in 1957, in January 1957, driving in an old Ford car. And while we're doing that, we sang a song called California, Here I Come. I'm not going to sing the whole thing, but here's a bit of the refrain. California, here I come, right back where I started from, where bowers of flowers bloom in the sun, each morning at dawning, birdies sing and everything. A sun-kissed mist said, don't be late, that's why I can hardly wait. Open up that golden gate, California, here I come. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Next up we have Rita Lopez Garcia Masakian. I hope I said your last name right. She's a third-generation migrant worker, and she's going to tell her story about the first time that she had to travel all by herself on a Greyhound bus.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. It's so exciting. I grew up, I was the third generation migrant worker. We started in South Texas and moved here. We went back and forth all around, but eventually most of my family settled here in Fresno area. My grandparents retired back in Texas. So when I was a junior in high school, my grandma had a stroke and my mom got her CNA and went to help her rehabilitate herself. So I thought we were going to be there. I had been going back and forth all my life. My mom and my siblings had moved from Cantua Creek to to Tranquility to San Joaquin to Carmen, in baby steps to Fresno, and then I've been moved to Rio Hondo. I thought we were going to be there a while. My grandma is strong, and it only took her about a year to get back to good. So I was there for one school year. That summer, my mom wanted to come and see how things were here because the rest of her children were here. I was the oldest of my siblings at home. I had a little brother and a little sister. And my grandpa really wanted to come visit his children that were still here. So we came, and it was only supposed to be for several weeks. My mom started taking care of business here, and that ended up running over into what the school year would be. So she said, well, take your grandpa back, and I will stay here, finish this stuff up, and I'll be over there with your siblings soon. I went back, started the school year. My mom was a single mom. I was 16 years old, and she trusted me like a lot. She had me on her banking accounts and stuff like that. And so I was able to go do everything I needed to start school. In a couple of weeks, she realized she was better here. And she told me, grab a ticket and come on back. I lived in a very sheltered childhood. So although there was that normal discrimination that comes from like, I am better than you for whatever reason, your skin color, your numbers in your bank account, the tags on your clothes, the, whatever God you call God, whatever it is, that was normal stuff that divides people. But I had never really faced racial discrimination. My parents, everybody around me buffered me. So I took care of my mom's accounts, botched those, hopped on the bus, and came for a 36-hour ride, 16 years old, back to Fresno. While I had been in Texas, I adopted the Chola lifestyle. I was wearing baggy dickies, I had my thin eyebrows, I had my dark lips, and I didn't think there was anything to be scared. It was a controlled environment. And I was almost grown. I felt like I was grown. I put my stuff, I had my mom, luckily, later on, you'll find out why I was lucky. I took a Foot Locker that had all of my family's important documents because we were going to reestablish ourselves here in Fresno. And the last thing I did was throw myself a going away party, and I was so tired when I got on that bus that I fell asleep. The next thing I know, the lights are getting turned on. We're in the middle of a desert, I don't know, New Mexico, Arizona, and Border Patrol's getting on the bus. And they're just randomly picking who they're gonna check. I was like, whatever, they're probably not gonna mess with me. And it didn't matter, I wasn't scared. I was born here. I'm third generation Texan, so I just kind of pulled the blankets up over my head again. And they got to me and they said, we want to check your stuff. So, okay, well, here's my ID. They said, no, we want to see your green card. So, I don't have a green card, I'm an American citizen. Oh, yeah, you're an American citizen. Yes, I'm an American citizen. Okay, I tried to show them my high school ID to prove that I belong here. I'm not invisible. Come on. They said, no, we need to see something that proves that you are an American citizen. I said, like what? Like your birth certificate. People don't just normally carry their birth certificate. How do you expect me to just come up with that, like off the top of my head? If I had just been traveling, I wouldn't have that. They said, well, we need to see it, or we're gonna need to take you in. Oh my God, these guys want to take me off the bus, and I'm alone, and I don't know what to do. There's only two biggies in my life that I always answer to, and that made me scared, which was number one, God, and I don't know if they even believe in God, and number two, my mama. I had a little flip phone, and I told them, you know what, I can get my birth certificate is down there. If you take me off the bus, I can show it to you. But I'm not getting off that bus until you talk to my mom and I hear from her it's okay for me to get off of this bus. Because she's expecting me in Fresno at a certain time, and if I'm not there, it's my ass and yours. They looked at me, and I must have looked like a runaway or something, because out of everybody, they picked me. Everybody else must have looked really, really neat because they felt like they could, and nobody else stood up and said, you guys should not be doing this to her. They saw that I was 16 years old, I was a minor. And they still tried to take me off that bus. But when I said, you're gonna need to talk to my mama first, they turned around, went, started talking to each other, came back and said, we'll let you go this time. Kind of makes me wonder how many runaways are decaying in the desert. Thank you.
So much for sharing that. Our next storyteller is actually going to tell her story from the floor for medical reasons. This is Carol Goulart. She's a first-generation American, the daughter of Portuguese immigrant, and she's going to share some of her father's stories. Let me get her microphone. Is it on already, or are you turning?
You said to turn it on.
Oh, how do I turn it on? I am microphone challenged. Oh, there's a little on button.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Goulart, and my story is not mine per se, but it's my father's and my mother's, and how I came from two different cultures on the far spectrum, but how they, through their marriage, merged together, and their traditions and their love and loyalty and dedication toward each other. My dad came from Madeira Island, Portugal, from a coastal area called Santa Cruz, and it was mountainous coastal, town. And my father's great memories of that were of the beautiful sea that he could see, the fishermen getting the fish, that was the trade over there. And also too, him walking on the coastal, shore, going to see his uncle every Sunday. He lived about 8 miles away, and how he would walk every Sunday. That was the thing that he would love to do, that he would go and have chicken dinner with his uncle. He was a bachelor, his mother's brother. His father came when he was 9 months old, and he did not see his father till he was 17. His father worked on the railroad going across America until he bought the family farm in Kerman. And then he had been sending for my grandmother and my dad to come, over here to America. My dad's first memory of coming to America was seeing the Statue of Liberty and coming across the great ocean of the Atlantic and seeing the lady with her beautiful face, he said, holding up the torch and the green color that it was, and thinking, this is a new country that I'm coming to, and it will be a beautiful, new future for us. He came over and he met his father, who he really did not know. And then my grandmother had 2 more sons, my uncles. That's why there was such a big difference. My father, between his brothers, 18 and 20 years, and his father was already getting up in age, so he pretty much was like the father to his brothers. He came into the family where my grandfather already had the dairy. My dad came in and started with, working on the dairy and also farmed. And as a bachelor, he didn't get married till 37, where he met my mother. And like we all have our stories of our parents, how they meet or where they come from another country and how they merge together. My mother was born here in Raleigh, California, but raised most of the time in Mexicali. And her family, was together of Mexican heritage and Spanish. And she came over here after her marriage had gone bad. She was married to a Mexican man in the military in Mexico. And after it had gone bad, she came over here to live with her sister in Fresno. And she had gotten a job over there by the Crest Theater. And it was doing, where she would sell tickets. And then she would also, like what was during the movie, she would be selling on the side candy bars and soda. And my oldest son likes to say that my parents met through my dad having to go to the doctor on the Fulton Mall, which they're having the reopening again today, that he had to go to the doctor to get a boil waxed. And he goes, so we're descendants of a boil mom, if you really look at it, when you look at it that way. That's how we are, we came from the meeting of a boil, and the Lance. So anyway, that's how they met, but come to find out, he had known her brother because my dad used to like to go, for him, the Saturday night was going to the Saturday Night Western Picture Show, and her brother was a bartender at the California Hotel, and he had gotten my mother also a job as to hosting and sitting people down at the restaurant. And so my dad re-met her again. So there it started. Now come the blending of the 2 cultures. My dad was Portuguese, my mother was Mexican, Spanish. And so bringing the 2 cultures and the 2 languages together, I couldn't differentiate growing up which one was Portuguese and which was Spanish. So you got it. I speak it both at the same time. And it's really pretty good when you're talking to family and they're looking at you from either Portuguese or Spanish, and they kind of like start going like that because it's like, okay, where did this one come from, or that. But a lot of the culture of both of them, pretty much you'd be surprised how within the faith of Catholic, and the traditions and the holidays, the food is different, but yet, there are a lot of similarities. And my father made sure that we knew my mother's culture and her traditions. Every year he would take us to Mexico after the harvest for 16th of September, and he loved to be there. My mother immersed herself in the Portuguese celebrations and the festas, and so we had this, and it was a great way to grow up, and yet you see the diversity and things of how they were. One of them was the how would I say, love that my grandmother and my mother shared. My grandmother never had a daughter. She had 3 sons. So my mother was her daughter. And my dad didn't have a chance in the house, okay? If he didn't agree with something, they would both gang up on him. That was it. If it came to even painting, the house, it's like, Tony, what color do you think we should paint the house? Well, I like this one here. And then my mother and my grandmother, no, not Tony, no basta, it's not going to be, so why even ask? Tony, what would you like for dinner? I want pork chops. No, vamos a echar la carne before it goes bad. We're going to use the meat before it goes bad. then why do you ask? It's like you didn't have a chance. Another thing were what would you call it, superstition, you know, circumstances to happen or that's going to happen. It was always going to be that you were going to have a cold or something. Don't go without shoes on your feet because you'll get sick, okay? Don't go into the pool of water or something without putting water on top of your dry head first, because otherwise you'll get your tonsils will swell up. And then there was the agreement of my mom and my grandmother not to tell me how, oh, and other things too, where they put their own words into things, like the hem, my mother would call it the hema, you know, WD-40, you know, spray. For my dad was a farmer, he would use that. He would tell me, Carol, go get me the fix it, no stick it spray, okay? You know, they all had their kind of like little things, you know, that they would like, you know, say what things were. They'd give it a different name, so when you go to school at a young age, you think, okay, you know, I know what this is. I'm going to say, you know, what they call it. And people are totally, you know, foreign to what you're saying. They don't even have a clue, but you do, right? And then they tell you the right word of it, okay? Well, my grandmother and my mother decided not to tell me exactly where babies come from, okay? And so on this story here, it's, you know, merging of the cultures, they, you know, decided, you know, until I was old enough, then I would know. Well, I came home, usually when General Hospital was on, and my mother and my grandmother were there, as usual, watching Nurse Jessie and Dr. Steve Harding and their long love that never got together, you know, but they were talking about, you know, one of the nurses, and the nurse came on, well, she had a baby. Okay, well, I decided, you know, then was like, okay, how are you going to get a baby? Mama, how do you get a baby? You know, and my grandmother was sitting there right by my mom, the both of them together, and my grandmother, no these, you know, no these, don't tell her, Lupe. And my mom's like, no te apures, Mom. You know, don't worry, Mom. I'm not going to tell her. And I go, Mama, and she goes, okay, you want to know how you get baby? I'm going to tell you. Okay. You're going to get a bird one day after you're married and you're older, and a bird going to come to your head and going to go, beep, beep, and then you're going to have a baby. Okay? Okay. This is true. I kid you not. Okay? And I go, okay, really? Well, of course, you're going to believe the word of your mother, right? Okay, so anyway, I go like this, I go, oh, okay. And I looked at Grandma, she goes, yeah, it's verdad, it's true, it's true. And I'm like, okay. Well, that was good when you're about, you know, just before 8 years old. And you go to school, and it's a rainy day. And so we're not going out to recess after lunch, and we're all sitting around this table, you know, doing some type of crafts or something. And pretty soon, you know, we've got paper dolls we're playing with. They're like, oh, no, if they kiss, pretty soon comes the baby. And I go, no, that's not how you get a baby. You know, and they're like, oh, they're like, oh, you know how you get a baby? Well, we all know how you get a baby. I'm like, no. So you know about the bird? And everybody's face is like, what? I'm like, yeah, the bird, it'll come and tell you after you're married, beep, beep, you're going to have a baby. And they're like, oh my God, you know, these little kids. And my one friend who's like 5 months younger than me, like, are you serious? Who told you this? I go, my mom. Oh, and my grandma. And the teacher is next to us, and she goes, Carol, your mother told you this? I go, yes, she did, Mrs. Tillian. And she goes, okay. She goes, I'm going to send a note at the end of the day, and I want you to take it to your mom. I go, am I in trouble? And she goes, no, but your mother is. That was it. Thank you very much.